Hello guys. Now I'm going to introduce you to 5 steps of mastering workflow. This is the stage where you're about to get control of your life. So let me introduce you to this chapter. The core process for mastering the art of relaxed, controlled engagement is a 5-step method for managing your workflow. The ever-present ingestion and expressions of our experiences. No matter what the setting, there are 5 discrete stages that we go through as we deal with our life and our work and their consistent inputs and changes. Getting things under control, whether that's in your kitchen or in your company, will incorporate them. And each of these separate aspects has its own best practices and tools and must work together with the rest as a whole to produce that wonderfully productive state of being present amid all the complexity. It is not simply about getting organized or setting priorities. Those are good things, but they happen as a result of applying these 5 steps, not by themselves. These procedures I am describing right here as a whole and using them to produce results is both easier and more challenging than you may think. So let me introduce you the 5 steps. Number 1, capture what has your attention. Then step 2, clarify what each item means and what to do about it. Step 3, organize the results, which presents the options we have. Step 4, reflect on, which we then choose to. Step 5, engage with. These 5 steps constitutes the management of the horizontal aspect of our lives, incorporating everything that we need to consider at any time as we move forward moment to moment. These are not arbitrary or purely theoretical suggestions. They are what we all do. Anytime we want to bring something under control and stabilize it for productive action. If you're planning to cook for dinner to your friends, but you come home and find the kitchen a total mess, how do you get on top of it? First, you identify all the stuff that doesn't belong where it is, the way it is. That is what the step 1, capturing things. And then you determine what to keep and what to throw away. That is where you clarify. You put things where they need to go, back in the refrigerator, in the garbage, or in the sink. This is where organization takes place. You then check your recipe book along with the ingredients and utensils you have. That is called reflection. And finally, you get started by putting butter in the pan to start melting. The method is straightforward enough in principle, and it is generally how we all go about our work in any case. But in my experience, most people can significantly improve their handling of each one of the 5 steps. The quality of our workflow management is only as good as the weakest link in this 5-phase chain. So all the links must be integrated and supported with consistent standards. So you have to understand that there is no exception about which step can be taken easy. All of them has to be considered equally important. Because the volume of pertinent content is not diminishing or the input slowing down, avoiding getting a grip on the martial art or workflow mastery will be at your own peril. Most people have major weaknesses in their capture process. Most of their commitments to do something are still in their head. The number of coulds, shoulds, might, want tos, and ought tos they generate in their minds are way out beyond what they have recorded anywhere else. Many have collected lots of things but haven't clarified exactly what they represent or decided what action, if any, to take about them. Random lists strewn everywhere, meeting notes, vague to-dos on post-its on their refrigerator or computer screens. Those lists alone often create more stress than they relieve. Others make good decisions about stuff in the moment, but lose the value of the thinking because they don't efficiently organize the results. Still others have good systems but don't reflect on the contents consistently enough to keep them functional. They may have lists, plans, and various checklists available to them, but they don't keep them current or access them to their advantage. Many people don't look ahead at their own calendars consistently enough. They current about upcoming events and deadlines. They consequently become victims of last minute craziness. Finally, if any one of these previous links is weak, what someone is likely to choose to engage in at any point in time may not be the best option, right? Most decisions are action and focus are driven by the latest and loudest inputs and are based on hope instead of trust. People have a constant nagging sense that they are not working on what they should be, that they don't have time for potentially critical activities, and that they are missing out on the timeless sense of meaningful doing that is the essence of stress-free productivity. So let's dive deeper into these things, because these 5 steps are not just simply done based on looking at them. Let's go in depth in each of the individual steps. Capture. It's important to know what needs to be captured, how to do the most effectively, so you can process it appropriately. In order for your mind to let go of the lower level task of trying to hang on to everything, you have to know that you have truly captured everything that might represent something you have to do, or at least decide about, and that at some point in the near future you will process and review all of it. Number 1. Gathering 100% of the incompletes. In order to eliminate holes in your bucket, you need to collect and gather placeholders for or representations of all the things you consider incomplete in your world. That is, anything personal or professional, big or little, of urgent or minor importance that you think ought to be different than it currently is, and that you have any level of internal commitment to changing. Many of the things you have to do are being collected for you as you read this. You're likely still getting packages and letters at home. Physical stuff is still landing in your in-tray at work. Even though it might not be as obviously in your face as your email, the stuff still requires some kind of resolution, a loop to be closed, something to be done, strategy, ideas, loitering in a notebook, dead gadgets in your desk drawers that need to be fixed or thrown away, and out-of-date magazines on your coffee table all fall into this category of stuff. As soon as you attach a should, need to, or ought to an item, it becomes an incomplete. Decisions you still need to make about whether or not you are going to do something, for example, are already incomplete. This includes all of your I'm going to's in which you have decided to do something but haven't started moving on it yet. And it certainly includes all pending and in progress items. In order to manage this inventory of open loops appropriately, you need to capture it into containers that hold items in abeyance until you have a few moments to decide what they are and what, if anything, you're going to do about them. Then you must empty these containers regularly to ensure that they remain viable capture tools. Basically, everything potentially meaningful to you is already being collected in the larger sense. It's not being directly managed in a trusted external system of yours, then it's resident somewhere in your mental space. The fact that you haven't put an item in your in-tray doesn't mean you haven't got it. But we are talking here about making sure everything you need is collected somewhere other than in your head. The capture tools. There are several types of tools, both low and high tech, that can be used to collect your incompletes. So let me give you some examples. It's like physical in-tray, like the standard plastic, wood, leather, or wire tray, whatever that might be, that can process mail, magazines, meeting notes, corporate reports, tickets, receipts, whatever, even flashlights with dead batteries, all of these things. Then writing paper and pads, loose leaf and bound notebooks, Note cards and paper pads of all shapes and sizes work fine for collecting random ideas, input, things to do, and so on. Whatever fits your taste and logistical needs. Digital and voice note taking. Computers, tablets, smartphones, and all kinds of new mobile tech gadgetry emerging daily can be used for capturing notes for later processing, preserving an interim record of things you need to remember to deal with. Email and texting. If you're wired to the rest of the world through email and texting, your software contains some sort of holding area for incoming messages and files, where they can be sorted until or stored until they are viewed, read, and processed. And then technology. Well, with the evolution of the digital world, it has been increasingly possible to integrate these various channels automatically. Written notes from paper, whiteboards can be instantly recorded, recognized, and funneled into software storage. Voice messages can be recorded, digitized, and printed out. You can text an idea to your email from your mobile device. Whether high-tech or low-tech, all of the tools and functions I have described serve similarly as in trace. There are success factors for capturing. Unfortunately, merely having an in-tray doesn't make it functional. Most people do have collection devices of some sort, but usually they are more or less out of control or seriously underutilized. So let me examine the 3 requirements to make the capturing phase work. Number 1. Every open loop must be in your capture system, out of your head. So you have to get it all out of your head. If you're still trying to keep track of too many things in your mental space, you likely won't be motivated to use and empty your in-trays with integrity. Most people are relatively careless about these tools because they know they don't represent discrete, whole systems anyway. There is an incomplete set of things in their in-tray and an incomplete set in their mind, and they're not getting a real payoff from either one. So their thinking goes, it's like trying to play pinball on a machine that has big holes in the table, so the balls keep falling out. There is a little motivation to keep playing the game. These collection tools should become part of your lifestyle. Keep them close by so no matter where you are, you can collect a potentially valuable thought. Think of them as being as indispensable as your toothbrush, or your driver's license, or your glasses. The sense of trust that nothing possibly useful will get lost will give you the freedom to have many more good ideas. And then, minimize the number of capturing locations. You must have as few capturing buckets as you can get by with. You should have as many in-trays as you need, and as few as you can get by with. You need this function to be available to you in every context. Since things you will want to capture may show up almost anywhere, if you have too many collection zones, however, you won't be able to process them easily or consistently. An excess of collection buckets can easily happen in both the low-tech and high-tech arenas. There is a real improvement opportunity for most people on the low-tech side, primarily in the areas of note-taking and physical in-tray collection. Written notes need to be corralled and processed instead of left lying embedded in stacks, notebooks, and drawers. So paradoxically, the tendency to accumulate a huge backlog of random inputs deal with the number of people troubled with that. So this is everything you have to be careful about. You have as many in-trays as you need, as few as you can get by with. You need this function to be available to you in every context, since things you will want to capture may show up almost anywhere. If you have too many collection zones, however, you won't be able to process them easily or consistently. An excess of collection buckets can easily happen in both the low-tech and high-tech area. There is a real improvement opportunity for most people on the low-tech side, primarily in the areas of note-taking and physical entry collection. Written notes need to be corralled and processed. So, implementing standard tools and procedures for capturing ideas and input will become more and more critical as your life and work become more sophisticated. As you proceed in your career, for instance, you will probably notice that your best ideas about work will not come to you at work. The ability to leverage that thinking with good collection devices that are always at hand is key to staying on top of your world. Empty the capture tools regularly. The final success factor for capturing should be obvious. If you don't empty and process the stuff you have collected, your tools are not serving any function other than the storage of amorphous material. Emptying the contents does not mean that you have to finish what is there. It just means that you have to decide more specifically what it is and what should be done with it. And if it is still unfinished, organize it into your system. You must get it out of the container. You don't leave it or put it back into the inbox. Not emptying your in-tray is like having garbage cans and mailboxes that no one ever dumps or deals with. You just have to keep buying new ones to hold an eternally accumulating volume. In order to get into empty, however, an integrated life management system must be in place. Too much stuff is left piled in trays because of a lack of effective systems downstream from there. When you master the next two steps and know how to process and organize your inputs and incompletes easily and rapidly, inbox can return to its original function. Let's move on to how to get those in-trays and email systems empty without necessarily having to do the work now. You must empty them regularly. That's what I have said here. And then clarify. Teaching them the item by item thinking required to get their collection containers empty is perhaps the most critical improvement I have made for virtually all the people I have worked with. When the head of a major department in a global corporation had finished processing all her open items with me, she sat back in awe and told me that though she had been able to relax about what meetings to go to thanks to her trust in her calendar, she had never felt that same relief about all the many other aspects of her job, which we had just clarified together. To be reminded of where now identified and entrusted to a concrete system, what do you need to ask yourself? You must question the whole deal. Both the capturing and the organizing phases is represented in the center trunk of the decision tree model, which I will be showing in the next slide. The first question is, what is it? This is not a dumb question. We have talked about our stuff and we have talked about collection buckets, but we haven't discussed what stuff is and what to do about it. For example, many of the items that tend to leak out of our personal organizing systems are amorphous forms that we receive from the government or from our company. Do we actually need to do something about them? And what about that email from human resources letting us know that blah blah about the blah blah is now the policy? I have unearthed piles of messages in stacks and desk drawers that were tossed. So, which is why the next decision is critical. Is it actionable? There are two possible answers for this: yes and no. If there is no action required, there are three possibilities. It is trash, no longer needed. Or no action is needed now, but something might need to be done later, so we will be incubating it. The item is potentially useful information that might be needed for something later. So that is our reference. What if it is an actionable item? That is the yes group of items. Stuff about which something needs to be done. Typical examples range from an email requesting a summary of the speech you have agreed to give at a luncheon, to the notes in your in-tray from your face-to-face meeting with the group vice president about a significant new project that involves hiring an outside consultant. Two things need to be determined about each actionable item. what project or outcome have you committed to, and what is the next action required. If it is about a project, you need to capture that outcome on a projects list. That will be the stake in the ground that will keep reminding you that you have an open loop until it is finished. So you have to understand that as a weekly review will bring this item back to you as something that is still outstanding. It will stay fresh and alive in your management system until it is completed or eliminated. What is the next action? This is the critical question for anything you have captured. If you answer it appropriately, you will have the key substantive thing to organize. The next action is the next physical, visible activity that needs to be engaged in. In order to move the current reality of this thing toward completion, some examples of next actions might be like a 2-minute action. These are all real physical activities that need to happen. Reminders of these will become the primary grist for the mill of your personal productivity management system. Once you have decided on the next action, you have 3 options. Number 1, do it. If an action will take less than 2 minutes, it should be done at the moment it is defined. Number 2, delegate it. If the action will take longer than 2 minutes, ask yourself, am I the right person to do this? If the answer is no, delegate it to the appropriate entity. Number 3, defer it. If the action will take longer than 2 minutes and you are the right person to do it, you will have to defer acting on it until later and track it on one or more next actions lists. That is the process we have to take while clarifying what is done about an item stuff. This is the flowchart that I was talking about. This is derived from Getting Things Done by David Allen. You can see the flowchart. You have to question what is it? Here, question what is it? If it is actionable, no, trash or stay or maybe or a reference project. If it is yes, decide what is the next action. If it is a multi-step, put it in project plans and review for actions. Less than 2 minutes, do it or delegate or defer it. Now the step of organizing. Let's deal with organizing. For non-actionable items, possible categories are trash, incubation, and reference. If no action is needed on something, you toss it, tickle it for later reassessment, or file it so you can find the material if you need to refer it at another time. To manage actionable things, you will need a list of projects, storage or files for project plans and materials, calendar, a list of reminders of next actions, and a list of reminders of things you're waiting for. All of the organizational categories need to be physically contained in some form. When I refer to lists, just mean some sort of reviewable set of reminders, which could be lists on notebook, paper, or in some sort of computer program, or even file folders holding separate pieces of paper for each item. The very first thing is projects. I define a project as any desired result that can be accomplished within a year that requires more than one action step. This means that some rather small things you might not normally call projects are going to be on your project list, as well as some big ones. The reasoning behind my definition is that if one step won't complete something, some kind of goalpost needs to be set up to remind you that there is something still left to do. If you don't have a placeholder to remind you about it, it will slip back into your head. The reason for the 1 year time frame is that anything you are committed to finish within that scope needs to be reviewed weekly to feel comfortable about its status. Another way to think of this is as a list of open loops, no matter what the size. After projects, you have to decide the partial projects. Projects do not initially need to be listed in any particular order, by size or by priority. They just need to be on a master list so you can review them regularly enough to ensure that appropriate next actions have been defined for each of them. You don't actually do a project. You can only do action steps related to it. When enough of the right action steps have been taken, some situation will have been created that matches your initial picture of the outcome closely enough that you can call it done. The list of projects is the compilation of finish lines we put before us to keep our next actions moving on all tracks appropriately. There may be reasons to sort your projects into different subcategories based upon different areas of your focus, but initially, creating a single list of all of them will make it easier to customize your system appropriately as you get more comfortable with its usage. Then, project support material. For many of your projects, you will accumulate relevant information that you will want to organize by theme or topic or project name. Your projects list will be merely an index. All of the details, plans, and supporting information that you may need as you work on various projects should be contained in separate file folders. Support materials and reference files. Once you have organized your project support material by theme or topic, you will probably find that it is almost identical to your reference material and could be kept in the same reference file system. The only difference is that in the case of Act 2 projects, support material may need to be reviewed on a more consistent basis to ensure that all the necessary action steps are identified. I usually recommend that people store their support materials out of sight. If you have a good working reference file system close enough at hand, you may find that the simplest way to organize them. There will be times though when it will be more convenient to have the materials out and instantly in view and available, especially if you are working on a hot project that you need to check references for several times during the day. The digital world has paradoxically made organizing reference and support materials simultaneously simpler and more complex. It is quick and easy to capture something from somewhere and copy it somewhere else, but deciding where it goes can be daunting. Given the plethora of parking places available to us and the myriad ways that we might want the information available to others as well as ourselves, the best practice is to keep your digital reference world as simple as possible and consistently reviewed and purged. And then the next action categories. As the workflow diagram we have seen earlier makes clear, the next action decision is central. The action needs to be the next physical, visible behavior without exception on every open loop. Any less than 2-minute actions that you perform and all other actions that have already been completed do not, of course, need to be tracked. They are done. What does need to be tracked is every action that has to happen at a specific time or on a specific day. Those that need to be done as soon as they can, and all those that you are waiting for others to do. So you have to use a calendar. Reminders of actions you need to take fall into two categories. Those about things that have to happen on a specific day or time, and those about things that just need to get done as soon as possible. Your calendar handles the first type of reminder. 3 things go on your calendar. 1 is time-specific actions, day-specific actions, and day-specific information. So these 3 type of things have to be addressed and recorded in your calendar. All the time-specific and day-specific actions have to be recorded in some sort of reminder format because those are actions. Instead, day-specific information is like the calendar is also the place to keep track of things you want to know about on specific days. Not necessarily actions you will have to take, but rather information that may be useful on a certain date. This might include directions for appointments, activities that other people will be involved in then, or events of interest. It is helpful to put short-term tickler to information here. This is also where you would want to park important reminders about when something might be due or when something needs to be started, given a determined lead time. And no more daily to-do lists on the calendar. Those three things are what go on the calendar and nothing else. This might be hearsay to past time management principles, but first, constant new input and shifting tactical priorities reconfigure daily work so consistently that it's virtually impossible to nail down to-do items at ahead of time. Having a working game plan as a reference point is always useful, but it must be able to be renegotiated at any moment. Trying to keep a list on the calendar, which must then be re entered on another day if items don't get done, is demoralizing and a waste of time. The next actions list I advocate will hold all of those actions, reminders, even the most time sensitive ones, and they won't have to be rewritten daily. Second, if there is something on a daily to do list that doesn't absolutely have to get done that day, it will dilute the emphasis on the things that truly do. If I have to call Miyoko on Friday because there is something I can reach her, I have to put it on my calendar. That said, there is absolutely nothing wrong with creating a quick informal short list of I have time, I really like to kind of things picked from your next actions inventory. It just should not be confused with your have tos, and it should be treated lightly enough to discard or change quickly as the inevitable surprises of the day unfold. And then the next actions list. So where do your entire action reminders go? On next actions list, which along with the calendar are at the heart of daily action management organization and orientation. Any longer than 2-minute non-delegatable action you have identified needs to be tracked somewhere. If you have only 20 or 30 of these, it may be fine to keep them all on one list, labeled Next Actions, which you will review whenever you have any free time. For most of us, however, the number is more likely to be 50 to 150. In that case, it makes sense to subdivide your Next Actions list into categories, such as calls to make when you have a window of time and your phone, or computer action items to see as options when you are at the device. And then the non-actionable items. You need well-organized, discrete systems to handle things that require no action as well as those that do. No action systems fall into 3 categories. 1. Trash, incubation, and reference, which is simply saying typically partial or someday or maybe list and reference material. Trash should be self-evident. Throw away, shred, or recycle anything. If you leave this stuff mixed in with other categories, it will seriously undermine the system and your clarity in the environment. Incubation. There are 2 other groups of things besides trash that require no immediate action, but that you will want to keep. Here again, it is critical that you separate non-actionable from actionable items. Otherwise, you will turn to go numb to your piles, stacks, and lists and not know where to start or what needs to be done. Say you read something in a newsletter. That gives you an idea for a project you might want to do someday, but not now. You will want to be reminded of it again later so you can reassess the option of doing something about it in the future. Or you get a notice about the upcoming season of your local basketball match that is 4 months away. But if you're in town, you would like to go, what should you do about that? There are 2 kinds of incubation tools that could work for this kind of thing. Someday or maybe lists and a tickler system. Someday or maybe is like it can be useful and inspiring to maintain an ongoing list of things you might want to do at some point, but not now. This is the parking lot for projects that would be impossible to move on at present, but that you don't want to forget about entirely. You would like to be reminded of the possibility at regular intervals. These items are of the nature of projects I might want to do but not now, but I would like to be reminded of them regularly. You must review this list periodically if you're going to get the most value from it. I suggest you include a scan of the contents in your weekly review. You will probably have some other types of information that are similar to someday or maybe, but that probably need a review only when you have an urge to engage in a particular kind of activity. These would be lists such as books to read, wines to taste, recipes to try, movies to rent, weekend trips to take, things like your kids might like to do, seminars to take, websites to surf. These all are the things you might take it in. And reference material. Many things that come your way require no action but have intrinsic value as information. You will want to keep and be able to retrieve these as needed. They can be stored in paper-based or digital form. Paper-based material like anything from the menu for a local takeout deli to the plans, drawings, and vendor information for a landscape project. Electronic storage can include everything from cloud-based data storage to archive folders in your communication software. The most important thing to remember here is that reference should be exactly that, information that can be easily referred to when required. Reference systems generally take two forms. One, topic and area specific storage, and general reference files. The first types usually define themselves in terms of how they are stored. For example, a file drawer dedicated to contracts. By date, a drawer containing only confidential employee compensation information. A series of cabinets for closed legal cases that might need to be consulted for future trials. Like something like that. Although at the same time, you might want to have general reference filing. The second type of reference system is one that everyone needs close at hand for storing ad hoc information that doesn't belong in some pre-designed larger category. You need somewhere to keep the instruction manuals for your kitchenware, the handwritten notes from your meeting about the Smith project, and those you didn't get to exchange at the end of your most recent trip to Sydney. The lack of a good general reference file can be one of the biggest bottlenecks in implementing an efficient personal management system. If filing and storing isn't easy and fast, you will pile up things. If your reference material doesn't have nice clean edges to it, the line between actionable and non-actionable items will blur visually and psychologically, and your mind will go numb to the whole business. Establishing a good working system for this category of material is critical to ensuring stress-free productivity. Now let's work on reflection. It is one thing to write down that you need milk. It is another to be at the store and remember it. Likewise, writing down that you need to call a friend, find out how he is doing after a significant event in his life, and wish him well is different from remembering it when you're at a phone. Have some discretionary time. You need to be able to step back and review the whole picture of your life. Work from a broader perspective, as well as drop down into the weeds of concrete actions to take as needed at appropriate intervals. For most people, the magic of workflow management is realized in the consistent use of the reflection step. This is where, in one important case, take a look at all your outstanding projects and open loops, what I call Horizon 1 level, on a weekly basis. It is your chance to scan all the defined actions, options, before you radically increasing the efficacy of the choices you make about what you are doing at any point in time. Your life is more complex than any single system can describe or coordinate, but the GTD methodology creates a coherent model for placeholding key elements, which still require attention, being kept current and being reviewed in a coordinated way. Most people have some simple components of this in various places. The contents and the utilization of these are elementary at best. So, question is what to review when? If you set up a personal organization system with a projects list, a calendar, next action list, and a waiting for list, not much will be required to maintain that system. The item you will probably review most frequently is your calendar, which will remind you about the hard landscape for the day. That is, what things truly have to be handled that day. This doesn't mean that the contents that are the most important in some grand sense, only that they must get done at any point in time. Knowing what has to get done and when creates a terrain for maneuvering. It's a good habit. As soon as you conclude an action on your calendar, check and see what else remains to be done. After checking your calendar, you will most often turn to your next actions. These hold the inventory of predefined actions that you can take if you have any discretionary time during the day. If you have organized them by context, they'll come into play only when those contexts are available. Projects waiting for and someday or maybe lists need to be reviewed only as often as you think they have to be in order to stop you from wondering about them. Then, what is the critical thing? The weekly review. Everything that might require action must be reviewed on a frequent enough basis to keep your mind from taking back the job of remembering and reminding. In order to trust the rapid and intuitive judgment calls that you make about actions from moment to moment, you must consistently retrench at some more elevated level. In my experience, that translates into a behavior critical for success. Weekly review. All of your project's active project plans, next actions, agendas, waiting for, and even someday or maybe lists should be reviewed once a week. This also gives you an opportunity to ensure that your brain is clear, that all the loose strands of the past few days have been captured, clarified, and organized. If you're like most people, you have found that things can get relatively out of control during the course of a few days of operational intensity. That is to be expected. So, what do we have to do in the weekly review? The time to gather and process all your stuff, review your system, update your list, get clean, clear, current, and complete. Most people don't have a really complete system. They get no real payoff from reviewing things for just that reason. Their overview isn't total. They still have a vague sense that something may be missing. That's why the rewards to be gained from implementing this whole process are exponential. The more complete the system is, the more you'll trust it. The more you trust it, the more complete you will be motivated to keep it. The weekly review is a master key to maintaining that standard. Most people feel best about their work the week before they go on a vacation, but it's not because of the vacation itself. But what do you do the last week before you leave on a big trip? Clean up, close up, clarify, organize, and renegotiate all your agreements with yourself and others. You do this so you can relax and be present on the beach, the golf course, or on the slopes with nothing else on your mind. I suggest you do this weekly instead of yearly, so you can bring this kind of being present to your everyday life. And the next step is to engage. The basic purpose of this workflow management process is to facilitate good choices about what you are doing at any point in time. So deciding whether to call somebody, finish a proposal, or clean up your emails, but with the proper orientation, you can feel much more confident about your choices. You can move from hope to trust in your actions, immediately increasing your energy and effectiveness. So I have three models for making action choices. Very first one is 4 criteria model. So let's assume for a moment that you're not resisting any of your stuff out of insecurity or procrastination. There will always be a long list of actions that you're not doing at any given moment. So how will you decide what to do and what not to do and feel good about both? So let's see what it is. The answer is by trusting your intuition. You have captured, clarified, or reflected on all your current commitments. You can galvanize your intuitive judgment with some intelligent and practical thinking, working well. There are three models that will be helpful for you to incorporate in your decision making about what to do. They won't tell you answers, but they will assist you in framing your options more intelligently, and that is something that the simple time and priority management mechanics can do. So let's discuss about the four criteria model for choosing actions in the moment. Number one, context. You're always constrained by what you have the capability to do at this time. A few actions can be done anywhere, but most require a specific location or having some productivity tool at hand, such as a phone or computer. These are the first factors that limit your choices about what you can do in the moment. Next is time available. When do you have to do something else? Have a meeting in 5 minutes would prevent doing any actions that require more time. Then, energy available. How much energy do you have? Some actions you have to do require a reservoir of fresh, creative, mental energy. Others need more physical horsepower. Some need very little of either. Then, priority. Given your context, time, and energy available, what action remaining of your options will give you the highest payoff? You're in your office with a phone and a computer, you have an hour, and your energy is 7.3 on a scale of 10. Should you call the client back, work on the proposal, process your emails, or check in with your spouse to see how his or her day is going? This is where you need to access your intuition and begin to rely on your judgment call in the moment. To explore that concept further, let's examine two more models for deciding what's most important for you to be doing. And then the threefold model for identifying daily work. Threefold model for identifying daily work. When you're getting things done or working in the universal sense, there are three different kind of activities you can be engaged in. Doing predefined work. Doing work as it shows up. Defining your work. So these are three different things. First one, when you're doing predefined work, you're working from your next action list and calendar, completing tasks that you have previously determined need to be done, or managing your workflow. You're making the calls you need to make, drafting ideas you want to brainstorm, attending meetings, or preparing a list of things to talk to your attorney about. Doing work as it shows up. Often things come up ad hoc, unsuspected, unforeseen, that you either have to or choose to engage in as they occur. For example, your partner walks into your office and wants to have a conversation about the new product launch. You talk to her instead of doing all the other things you could be doing. Every day brings surprises, unplanned for things that just show up, and you'll need to expend at least some time and energy on many of them. When you follow these leads, you're deciding by default that these things are more important than anything else you have to do at those times. Defining your work. Defining your work entails clearing up your in tray, your digital messages, and your meeting notes, and breaking down new projects into actionable steps. As you process your inputs, you will no doubt be taking care of some less than 2-minute actions, and tossing and filing numerous things. A good portion of this activity will consist of identifying things that need to get done sometime, but not right away. You will be adding to all of your lists as you go along. Once you have defined all your work, you can trust that your list of things to do are complete. Your context, time, and energy available still allow you the option of more than one thing to do. The final thing to consider is the nature of your work, its goals, and standards. The next is the 6-level model for reviewing your own work. Priorities should drive your choices, but most models for determining them are not reliable. In order to know what your priorities are, you have to know what your work is. There are at least 6 different perspectives from which to define that. To use an appropriate analogy, the conversation has a lot to do with horizon or distance of perception. So the horizons, horizon 5, principles and purpose. Horizon 4, vision. Horizon 3, goals. Horizon 2, areas of focus and accountability. Horizon 1 is current projects. So let's start from the bottom up. So let's consider going from the bottom up. The ground is current actions. This is the accumulated list of all the actions you need to take, all the phone calls you have to make, emails you have to respond to, the errands you have got to run, agendas you want to communicate to your boss and your life partner. You'd probably have more than 100 of these items to handle if you stopped the world right now with no more input from yourself or anyone else. Horizon 1 is current projects. Generating most of the actions that you currently have in front of you are the 30 to 100 projects on your plate. These are the relatively short-term outcomes you want to achieve, such as setting up a new home computer, organizing a sales conference, moving to a new headquarters, and getting a dentist, like that. Horizon 2, areas of focus and accountabilities. You create or accept your projects and actions because of the roles, interests, accountabilities you have. These are the key areas of your life and work within which you want to achieve results, maintain standards. Your job may entail at least implicit commitments for things like strategic planning, administrative support, staff development, market, research, customer service, or asset management, and your personal life has an equal number of such focus arenas. Like health, family, finances, home environment, spirituality, recreation, etc. These are not things to finish but rather to use as criteria for assessing our experiences and our engagement, to maintain balance and sustainability as we operate in our work and our world. Listing and reviewing these responsibilities gives a more comprehensive framework for evaluating your inventory of projects. Horizon 3 is goals. What you want to be experiencing in various areas of your life. Work, 1 to 2 years from now, will add another dimension to defining your work. Often meeting the goals and objectives of your job will require a shift in emphasis, your job focus, with new accountabilities emerging. At this horizon, personally too, there probably are things that you would like to accomplish or have in place, which could add importance to certain aspects of your life and diminish others. Horizon 4 is vision. Projecting 3 to 5 years into the future generates thinking about bigger categories, organizing strategies, environmental trends, career and lifestyle transition circumstances. Internal factors include longer-term career, family, financial, and quality of life, aspirations, and considerations. Outer world issues could involve changes affecting your job and organization, such as technology, globalization, market trends, competition. Decisions at this altitude could easily change what your work might look like on many levels. Horizon 5, purpose and principles. This is the big picture view. Why does your company exist? Why do you exist? What really matters to you? No matter what, the primary purpose for anything provides the core definition of what the work really is. It is the ultimate job description. All goals, visions, objectives, projects, and actions derive from this and lead towards it. These horizon analogies are somewhat arbitrary. And in real life, the important conversation you will have about your focus and your priorities may not exactly fit one level or another. They can provide a useful framework. However, to remind you of the multi-layered nature of your commitments and tasks, obviously, many factors must be considered before you feel comfortable that you have made the best decision about what to do and when. Setting priorities in the traditional sense of focusing on your long-term goals and values, though obviously a necessary core focus, does not provide a practical framework for a vast majority of the decisions, tasks you must engage in day to day. Mastering the flow of your work at all the levels you experience that work provides a much more holistic way to get things done and feel good about it. So that's it. We have discussed about the 5 steps of mastering workflow. In the next lecture, we're going to learn about the project planning and its 5 phases. So stay tuned with me. Thank you very much, guys.